Welcome back to The Unknown Angler. Today we're going to be tying the Albie Whore. Nope, I did not name it. That's the name of the fly.
I'll show you how to prepare feathers for two particular flies which I'm going to be tying. One is the Albie Whore, and the other one is the Deceiver, Lefty's Deceiver. And the Albie Whore isn't the traditional Albie Whore that you would normally see. This is what I'm going for. This is a little bit different. I'll show you how to tie that. But and also the Deceiver is just a traditional deceiver in white that I think they have a pretty unique look to them because of the feathers I use. So I'd like to show you the hackles that I use in making these and how I prepare them first, and I'll put this at the beginning of each of the videos that I'm doing for them. But it all comes down to a couple of things. Number one, you don't need to use this particular brand and this particular hackle. I'm showing you what I like to use. You can use any deceiver hackle that you would like to use. I'm going to show you how I prepare them. You can prepare any hackle the same way that I'm doing here. These in particular I really like, and the reason is because, well, first of all, they're the Whiting American hackle. These are the rooster saddles. They're Whiting rooster saddles, and the reason I love these so much is because of these round ends on them, and you can see right there what I'm talking about. There's nice round tips on them. They don't come to a point, and I really like that for the look of the fly. As with all hackle capes, larger hackles are up at the top. Smaller hackles are down at the bottom. One of these capes would probably last you a lifetime. Like I say, I tie. For the Albie Whore, you'll be using all the hackles down at the base of the cape. All these hackles are going to be anywhere from 2 to 3 inches long, and what you're looking to do is get 2 inches and 2.5 inches out of here. And what I do prior to tying any of these flies is I go in and I'll just pull out bunches of these hackles and stack them up. And the reason is because we use 4 hackles for each one of the flies. And then what I'll do is I'll separate the hackles out. In this case, these are the smaller ones. I'll separate them out into bunches of 2, match up the tips, go all the way down to the base where the base is, and peel off at the base. Okay, I'm going to peel those off there. And what you're left with is the hackle without the fluff. Let's see if we can get that. Nice there, beautiful. The hackle without the fluff. And those happen to be exactly 2 inches long. I've done this enough, I know exactly where they are. If you don't do this a lot, then you should measure them. These are the larger ones. You see I got 2 bunches of hackles here. These are the ones that are about 3-inch hackles. I'm going to try to get 2.5 inches out of here. This is for the Albie Whore. You need 4 hackles per fly. That adds up fast. There we go. And let me measure these out. I'll see what these are. These are exactly 2.5 inches. Once you have those done, now I've got a matched pair for a fly. Once you have those done, place them belly side up. So once you've removed all the fluff from the base of the hackles and you have them to the right length, and we do them in bunches of 2s so that you have matching hackles for this. I take them and I place them down on a piece of paper or whatever, curved side up, so the curve is going this way, you can tell, of the hackle. I'm going to come in here with some Solar Res. This is the thin stuff, and just just take the brush and really make sure there's little to none on there, and just put a little dab right there at the base, just a little bit. I mean, almost absolutely nothing. and just let it soak in just a little bit. This is going to help you make sure that your fly comes out almost perfect. I know this is kind of seems like an extra step. Take the time and do this, and then I'm not sure whether you can see how little I put on there when the flashlight's on it, but basically the flashlight will now cure that and harden it, and you're going to see why I do that when we actually tie the flies. But now I have a match set, and I like to take those as a match set, put them all together. That's one fly right there, and go over here to my nice hairline material keeper, and just be real careful when you do this. You don't want to smash the hackles, but just put them in here. Okay, there's one. And we'll take all 12 of those, take them up, and we'll tie 12. An even dozen. We're going to be tying the Albie Whore. For that, we're going to be using the Mustad S71 SNP-DT. This is a 2X heavy, 1X long hook. It's a streamer hook. It's a saltwater signature series streamer hook. I like this because it's got a little bit longer shank than a regular hook, and it makes a nice body for this fly. Okay, so we're going to go with the Ultra Thread 140 in white. I'm going to start out at the front of the fly, about 1 hook eye gap in back of the hook eye, and I'm going to wrap all the way back to the hook bend. Now I'm going to walk you through this the way I do it. You don't need to do it this way necessarily, but when I reach the hook bend, that thread, when I lay it down, should be between the point of the hook and the barb of the hook. Cut it off. The next thing, little white bucktail. Don't use your best bucktail for this. It's not going to be seen. Basically what this is for a base. We're going to be tying a base for the feathers here. Not over bucktail is a very, very small portion of bucktail. A little over 1 1/4, maybe 1 1/2 the hook shank length. The reason for this is to splay the hackle out a little bit and keep them splayed. But it is not to be longer than the hackle we're about to put on there. And do that. I'm going to cut that off here. The biggest reason for this right here is actually getting a base in place. Oh, that sounded weird. Trying to get a base right here, maybe a 1/4 inch, to put the hackles on. Now, you saw in the previous part of this video that I did a whole bunch of hackles up beforehand. Hopefully you watched that. And you'll see I have 2 match sets of short 2-inch long and 2 match sets of longer 2.5 inches long. So we're going to take the 2-inch long ones, these guys right here, and we're going to put those on. Now, if you remember, if you watched the first part of this video, I put a little bit of epoxy right there, a little bit of the UV epoxy, and that little dot of epoxy is what I'm going to tie into. And the reason for that is, look how nicely that sits on the hook. I mean, for a tie-in point, when you're first tying these in, if you're trying to tie that without that piece of UV epoxy, that will spin all around. It'll do all kinds of stuff to you. It won't make for a nice, even tying point that we have there. And it won't make for a nice flat fly. Likewise, on the other side, if you match up the epoxy, once again, if you squeeze those together, those 2 tips should match up really nicely. Perfect. Let's move forward. Cut that off. Great. Next thing we're going to put on, little crystal flash. Now I'm going to take one strand and one strand only of the crystal flash, going to fold it in half and cut it into 2 pieces. And on the outside of this inside feather, and you're going to see there's an inside and an outside feather in a second, I'm going to wrap back on that. You've seen me do this multiple times with other flies. And we're going to grab this, flip it over to the other side, tie in on the other side, and then what I'm going to do is cut that off right even with the back of those, and we're good. Now we have little crystal flash on either side of the fly. From this point forward, we are going to tie in the other 2. As in before, I like to tie the back side first, flip the hook over. You can see how that's about a 1/2 inch longer than the other hackle. Make a couple of wraps to secure it. You can, at this point, you can move those hackles around a little bit, and because you have that nice little piece of epoxy, they'll move very cleanly for you. Likewise on this side, tie in the hackle, over the epoxy, dot. Look, see how that moved? That moved right down. And you can move it around so you can get it to sit right where you'd like it to. And that's right where I want it to. And you get that, see how that that splays out in there too? So you have hackles that all match up. They're all nice on the inside, and they look great on the profile. Great. I'm going to tie forward and tie these off. Now, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to take a little bit of time to make sure I have an even transition. Make it not too bumpy. Okay. Coming all the way back here to the bend of the hook again. And now we're going to tie in some lateral scale. Now this is 1/8 inch lateral scale. It's the thicker stuff. I use the thinner stuff for the sides of the craft fur minnow. Cut off 2 pieces of this. And once again, take care of the back side first. I want to tie this in. Now, because you've gotten that nice flat tie-in point there, you're going to be able to make a few turns and then adjust this accordingly, slip it around, get it right where you'd like it so it lines up with that feather. Perfect. Wrap it forward a little bit. Then you want to pull this back. You're going to use this in a second. Pull that back over it and tie that all the way to the back there. Perfect. Flip it back over again. Once again. I'm going to tie this in. I'm going to slide it up so it's right even with where, and I don't know whether you can see the spine. Hopefully you know what I'm talking about. The spine of the hackle that's running down there. Line that evenly up with the spine of the hackle and you're good. A couple of wraps. That's good. Fold it back on itself. Once again. Good. Perfect. Now, we are going to palmer hackle through this fly. I'm not going to tell you what to use here. I would use a cheaper hackle. These are Ewing hackle. That is their deceiver cape, which is a relatively cheap cape. I don't use this for deceivers, but I use it for a whole bunch of other stuff. The hackles are really nice for palmering this fly. Do not use one of the hackles. Well, you can. I shouldn't say do not. I wouldn't use the hackles off of the cape, the saddle hackles off of the rooster cape that we talked about at the beginning of the video. And the reason is those will become rarer than hen's teeth for you later on when you start really using up that cape. And because you're using 4 hackles per fly here, that cape will get used up pretty quickly. So use a cheaper hackle. A booger hackle will work fine too in here, just something you can palmer through. And then we're going to take and use 15mm Estaz chenille. Okay, in this case I'm using pink, chartreuse, or clear. All work well. The pink and the clear are the ones that I get asked for the most. So now I should show you that I removed a little bit of the fuzz from the end of the chenille there, so that we don't get lumpy butt in here. You don't want lumpy butt. Even though there is already a lump in there from your tying in, you want to keep that as good as possible. So peel off a little bit of the chenille. You should do that with all your fly tying, whether you're tying woolly buggers or anything else with chenille, or just peel it off a little bit. Wrap back to the front of the hook. Leave a good hook eye gap in there. You're going to see what that's for in just a second. Now we're going to go close turns forward. This isn't palmered, this is close turns to the front of the fly. And if you made your transition well, and this one looks like it was made well, those close turns won't, flip over the bump and make an unsettled wrap there for you. Once you get to the front of the fly, once you get all the way up here, you see I've left a good gap there. I'm going to tie this off now. I'm going to take 1 or 2 turns, and make sure you don't do that. 2 turns. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull this back, and I'm going to make a couple of turns over the top and actually go back a little bit in this fly, creating a kind of a bump at the head. It looks a little, off right now, but this is, you'll see what we're using this for in just a second. So you can see I've left a gap here, and now I'm tying back into the chenille, and I'm actually tying a little bit of a bump into the chenille. Now what you want to go through here is you want to take this. We're going to do 4 wraps with this hackle. So 1, and you know what? Fluff this forward. Get that nice and fluffed up. 1, 2, 3, 4. You don't need to over hackle this fly. 4 wraps and you're done. Cut that off. Nice. Remove all that stuff there. Don't worry about it. Like I said, you don't worry about the hackle on this fly. Make a couple of turns in here. Do not worry about tying a neat head on here. You'll see why in a second. Okay, I'm going to take the outside. This is the inside. That's the one that lays up against the feather. This is the outside one. I'm going to pull down, pull up, just kind of divide the feathers out a little bit. Pull this in here, do it across, push the feathers away, push the hackle away. I'm going to tie this in. That's going to form your lateral line all the way up your fly. Take a couple of healthy turns, cut it off. Go to the other side. Oh, got the inside one. Get the outside one. And you want to push up. Get those hackles out of the way. And now we're going to tie this off on the inside. Once again, don't worry about all those hackle fibers there. and you want to make sure that's pulled nice and tight. Now, normally I would tell you, do not make an ugly head. This is an ugly head. Don't worry about it. You're going to cover it up in just a second, so you don't have to worry about it at all. In fact, we're going to 6-turn whip finish this off. Perfect. And we're going to cut this off right at the tip of the feather. I always cut that at an angle. You can flip this over, lift this down, cut it off at an angle, tip of the feather. Bingo. Oops, sorry. Beautiful. Now, there's all this extra fluff and stuff in here. Take your fingers, pull everything back, hold your fingers towards the front, and make sure all the hackles are pulled back. And then go in there, and without burning your fingers, burn all that residue off of there. And the reason for that is because you want a nice, clean area for when you put the little fish skull piece on there. So you can see all that area is going to get covered up. Do not put the eyes on the fish skull. Now, I'm using the fish skull fish masks. I'm using a number 5. Likewise, I'm going to use the fish skull living eyes, earth eyes. Those are also 5 millimeters. So the 5 is a 5 millimeter. But do not put the eyes on prior to putting this on, prior to putting the fish skull head on. And the reason is we're going to take some cheap, and this is a standard thick UV glue. I buy this off of Amazon. You don't have to worry about, this is not what you're finishing your fly off with. It dries a little tacky, but it doesn't, it dries really hard and it sticks really well. So I use this whenever I'm doing some, exactly what I'm doing here, whenever I'm gluing something on. And I'm about to glue, and the reason for using the thick is obvious. You want that to be able to get all over the inside of that. Now, once again, being very specific here, but lift up on this when you hit it with the flashlight. As soon as you hit it with the flashlight, it goes solid as a rock. So you're good. Now it's solid. It's not going anywhere. Keep going with the flashlight a little bit. Looks a little bit ugly because you can see through it, but you need to see through it at this point, so the UV cure will go. UV flashlight will go through it and it'll cure it up. I'm going to take this. I'm going to wrap a little bit of a head here. When we do a final finish on the fly, we're actually going to put UV epoxy over the entire piece of the head there, and the eyes and everything else, just as a final coat. Right now I'm going to tie that off with 6-turn whip finish. Drop my scissors. Cut that off. Okay. Next, we're going to use some Zap-A-Gap gel. Do not take and pour a drop in the eye. Push a drop out a little bit and just tap it in there. Get a very, 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 very little in there. Once again, tap it very, very, very little. Nice part about the gel, it takes a little while to cure. In fact, it takes a long while to cure. So you got time to get your eye on your bodkin needle. Don't try to do this with your finger in place and then push it down, tap it down in there. I can tell you from the first ones I tied of these, I did not. I just stuck the eyes on there with the stick-on that was on the eye. Useless stuff. The stick-on that's on the eye will not keep these in place. Not only that, I double epoxy over them, but also at this point, I take this, now that's the finished fly other than more UV epoxy going over the head, but I'm going to take this fly off of here now because I leave this for at least half an hour to just cure, to make sure that that UV epoxy is really cured. And just like the baking shows, I have one all set and all ready to go here with the eyes. And you can see how nice that looks. We're going to just now take a little of the good UV cure stuff, which is the bone dry solar rays, and we're going to put that right in the eye socket. Make sure that's filled, and we're going to come down here and put it on the head and actually paint a lot right around the head area. I'm going to cure that up. Flip it over the other side. If you don't let that glue cure, it won't cure all the way once you put the UV epoxy on it. So you want to leave those a half an hour and let that cure up before coating it with the UV epoxy. And there you have it. That's my version of the Albie Whore, using the saddle hackles. Good luck. See you next time.